How's it going, everyone? This is Wenbo. Today we are going to have a sculpting tutorials in Blender. Well, I've been looking at it online and looking for resources talking about creating cosmetic swatches, but there's very limited resources talking about how to do this inside Blender. So I'm thinking, well, there will be a good introduction videos about how to do sculpting inside Blender for you guys. As you can see here, I'm inside Blender now, and this is the file that I already created. As you can see here, these are looks very photorealistic, and apparently if we go to the solid mode, these are all real mesh. They're not really fake textures put onto it. So I'm going to show you how to do that exactly. Without talking too much, let's do a new file, general, don't save. Let's do that. What we're going to do here, we're going to break down this process in 3 major steps. One is called shape blocking. It's just basically getting a general shape. But the second one is that we are going to use ditopo to kind of creating the general shape, a little bit refined. And the third one, we are going to remash the whole thing and then do adding the details later. So, okay, let's drag a reference image right here. So this is the reference image. I'm gonna hit select this, hit G, X, grab it, hit select the image, hit the R to rotate it, and 90 degrees. So if I go to the top view, so I can see the reference image from the top view. Then I'm gonna go to the image empty settings, and I'm just gonna dial down the opacity of this reference image, and because it's just a reference image, I want to have in the general shape. So next thing, I'm going to adding a mesh. Shift A to adding a cube will be perfect fine, and hit Control 3 to adding some Subservice Modifier in 3 levels. And then if you go to the tab into the edit mode, so you can actually refine this shape. So Alt Z to go to the X-ray mode. We're just gonna select the vertex and hit S to scale down. I'm just trying to getting some general shape of this mesh. So this is kind of the very first step that I was talking about to getting the general shape of it. Select this, Control R to adding a loop cut, and you can hit double G to grab it. It doesn't really matter. This is not something you have to be doing very precisely, but in this process, the closer you get at the first stage, it'll be much easier to work on in the later when we're still doing this process. Okay, so now we'll go to the side view. You can see that this is pretty big and flat. We are going to adding a loop cut from backside, and we are going to select all these because we are still in the X-ray mode. Select all the vertex, hit S, Z, 0, so can make it flat. Hit the grab G and Z, kind of come up. So we're just trying to getting this very nice and flat because we're gonna touch on the ground, so we want the bottom part is being flat. Okay, so just grab Z here, and it doesn't really matter at this stage because the geometry is very different when you're working with sculpting. So this just make us a little bit easier when we working on. So you can see here the general shape of the swatches that we want to create. Hit R to rotate it a little bit, and then hit that. And I feel like this top part is still too thick, so I'm just basically just gonna select top, hit G and Z to grab it. As you can see here, we have some very general block shape of that swatch now. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to apply this Subservice Modifier. Apply. Now if you go to the edit mode, you can see we have a lot of vertex being applied. Okay, so this is kind of the step 1, the big shape blocking. So we will go to the step 2, which is going to using ditopo to actually refine the shape a little bit. So now we are going to, first time in my channel, we're gonna hit the sculpting tab, And in here, you can see this looks very different. The interface looks different. We have a bunch of brushes, that's what they call it, to refine this mesh. So typically what I would do, I just come here to drag it a tiny bit to get 2 rows of the brushes, and also come down to the right hand side. As you can see here, we have a lot of settings to changing the brushes. There are tons of sculpting tutorials on YouTube. You can spend hours into it to find what's interesting for you. But for this tutorials, I'm just focusing on how to get this thing done. Okay, so the first thing I will do, we're gonna go to the brush, and I'm gonna go to the brush setting. Here's the under the advanced. I'm gonna click that. I want to making sure I check the front face only. So having that, whenever I'm having a, for example, a mesh or using a brush, I'm only working on the front face, not the back end, because the back side I already make it flat, so I don't want to do the double work. So this is something we need to turn on for sure. Okay, so now what I will do, because right now I'm actually switching mouth to a pen display, because I've been using a pretty fancy pen display thing to really doing sculpting. Most of you probably have a tablet, which is another tablet pad that you can use using the pencil to draw. But my pen display is actually a big screen. It looks like an iPad, though I can actually do a bunch of stuff to do that. If you really want to get into the sculpting, I would highly recommend to buy a tablet, regular tablet. It would be fine. Okay, and first thing I'm going to do, I'm gonna using the grab brush here, or you can hit the G and using hit F to control the size of the brush, and shift F is gonna control the strength of the brush. Okay, so I'm just gonna drag, grabbing this thing, just getting another big part of the size or the shape, kind of getting a little bit closer. Right now, as you can see, this geometry looks very distorted, and we are not really getting close to the organic shape. So you see there's something going on right here, because we don't, in this mesh, we don't have a lot of shapes going on here. So go to the top view. What I will do next, I'm gonna enable this die topo. Hit the check mark. You usually have a window pop out said warning. Is that okay? Yes. Just hit OK. And then what you're gonna do here, here's the resolutions. The best way I found is that I usually using this eyedropper to go select my current mesh. You will see how much resolutions that this current mesh has. Remember now the default is 3. If I using the eyedropper to do a sample, let's see again. So actually right now the resolutions is 10. So I basically just want to adding a little bit more geometries on here. So I think I can just actually do a little bit more instead of exactly the same. I probably just gonna do 15. Okay, the bigger number it is, the higher resolution it is. Hit OK. And then what I will do here, whenever I drag things, they're just adding more geometries. If I'm going to go to the extrude mode, Alt Z, see. So what I will do, if I'm going to using a clay strips, so if I'm actually just apply something on it, you'll see there we get more geometries adding on to the surface. You can see that's just getting more dense because now I have a higher resolution brush onto it. Okay, so next thing we are going to continue work on this in the solid mode. As you can see here, it changed the way it looks. So what I will do, if I holding shift, no matter which brush you are using, if you're holding shift, you automatically switch to a smooth brush. The smooth brush is gonna help you kind of smooth the surface a little bit, right? So I was using the grab tool, hit G, I can just continue to getting some shapes, and then meanwhile I can just using the smooth tool, just kind of getting smooth out. So you can also changing the strength or anything to making sure you're doing the right way, and this thing actually spent a good amount of time to really sculpt a really good swatches. And but the beautiful part about this is you can always reuse this and later, and you just need to changing the textures, lighting environment, or even colors. So that's kind of the beauty part of that. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to using the clay strips brush, but this time I'm gonna hold control. To the default one is actually adding the volume. Okay, so if I hold control, I can actually just decrease the volume. So because we want having a kind of like a mesh going on here to really getting the dent inside of it. So I want to making sure my smooth brush, the strength is a little bit low because it was too strong. So I'm going to do, I think type 0.3 should be fine. So when I go back to the clay strips and I holding shift, I'm going to having a little bit better smooth brush going on here. Okay. All right. So it's much better. So I can just smooth it out. And you can even just kind of rotate it a little bit. So we are still in the second phase. Okay, so we just want to having a general shape of that. Okay, and hit the shift, and you see some of the mesh is gonna go down there. So we will fix that. Okay, this is the part that really taking a lot of time, and you need to have a good vision of eyes to really understanding how the thing works. And now you can see there are some mesh that actually being pushed too much. So what I will do to fix it, I'm gonna go to the inflate brush, hit that, and we're gonna just gonna recover some of that mesh. Right, it's just being applied too much. So that's something that I don't want to happen. But the reason it's happening because each brush is supposed to having their own settings, the front face only. So this is something that's kind of messed the things up a little bit. So I'm gonna fix that, and we're going to come back. So I'm just gonna using that to get some geometry back, and hit the grab tool to get that some of the stuff going on here. Okay. All right. So now we are kind of finishing the second steps. Like we have a little bit bigger refined shapes using the ditopo, and then now next thing we are going to do, we are going to use Remash. Remash is basically a function that is gonna make everything with a unified grid or unified resolution. Because using a ditopo, it doesn't really having that same effect. It is just adding specific details in specific areas. So we are going to disable the ditopo and go to the Remash. And that thing also have a sample eyedropper. So we're gonna click that to see how much resolution we have. So it's 0.003 for this. Numbers, I usually just kind of do this and then just select a little bit smaller numbers, and then making sure all the details we done already remain. So I just gonna do 0.001 instead and hit the Remash. Once you hit Remash, you'll see this thing's getting a little bit smoother, and we are actually getting more details out of it. So let's see what we can do here. So I hit the G to grab it. So I'm just gonna grab it something here and hit the shift and to smooth out the surface, and it's getting something fixed a little bit. Okay, so now it looks okay for my understanding. You can see here we still have something that we need to fix on the details. As you can see here, the stuff we want to make it looks very realistic is all these small details, the creases and the lines and the even small bubbles and the things. This is the step 3. We are going to adding all these details onto this mesh. We are going to use a brush. It's called Draw Sharp. So we're gonna go here, and I'm just adding some small details. And see here, if I'm doing this in draw sharp is actually kind of drawing something back. So what I would do, undo it, Control Z. I can hold Control and using this brush, so I can just kind of draw something in. This is more like a crease. Okay, so just adding some minor details. As you can see here, we have some details in here, and smooth it out. And usually the stuff working the best is when you're working with draw sharp, and then usually you're using the pinch tool, just kind of get that pinch in to getting that a little bit more refined. Same thing over here, so we can actually use that to do something a little bit more. And then using the pinch tool to emphasize all these. At the same time, we're gonna using a smooth brush to just getting that everything smooth out. All right, and using the clay strips, we're going to hit F, hit Control to getting that a little bit flatter. So we have a good thing about the reference image in here. We actually can see if the mesh is gonna poke through the other side while showing what's going on here. So I'm just gonna hold that, and we can even using the script tool to getting that script it out. Okay, to make a little bit flatter. And this is kind of like this is the part that need a lot of patience, and also practice to getting that looks very nice. It's not going to be easier than the regular modeling, but with the sculptings, and you open up a lot of possibilities. Okay, so especially for these edges, what I would do, I'm gonna making sure that thing's not really poking to the other side. When I hit the grab, I need making sure I enable the face front only. So I just gonna get that recovered, and gonna go with the script tool, especially on the edge. I'm just going to making sure the edge look a little bit thinner, because that's where the pressures are being applied on the top. Okay. Same time, making sure front face only, always have that. So I'm just gonna recover some of that. Drag something on the paper. So because for that, so we'll be able to see that similar effect. It feels like the brush, feels like the mesh has been smashed on the surface. Okay. And now next thing we are going to do here, we are going to using the snake hook. So I'm just going adding a little bit details on the side. Hit F. Just gonna grab some of that. Hit the smooth. Just giving some a little bit small. Oops. Have two small details on there. Okay. And there's sometimes usually it's just happening when you do a quick swap and there's something left. It's just adding that little bit in organic shape into it. I think most of us having good eyes to catching the details, and a lot of time you're winning the details when you're doing small adjustments in here. So just having that going to help you quite a bit. Sometimes they will have some bubbles a tiny bit, so I'm just gonna do a tiny one. Zoom in. This is called blob. Okay. Changing the small size. Adding some blobs. Okay. This is going to take hours and hours to get it really perfect. And you can add as much as details you want. So I'm just going to quickly get something done here. And show you how to do it. So, well, you will know how to do that by now. So next thing we are going to do here, we can using a smooth tool to really smooth things out, or you can just go back to the object mode and right click, shade smooth. As it's going to kill some details. But if you really want to remain details, you're going to have a high resolution on your Remash, and making sure everything's smooth and to getting the details you want. But for the purpose of this video, I want to keep it short and to quickly let you guys how to utilize this. So we're gonna go to the shade edit. We're just going to quickly disable this, adding a scene, and Shift A to adding a light. And we're gonna go to the area light, R, Y 90, and grab that. Making sure the size is good, and we're gonna changing some power. So let me do 1000. Okay, so now here we are going to adding a default textures, and then for this one I'm going to adding some sort of color. I'm gonna get the reference images out and making sure the opacity is 0. So when I select this and hit the E shortcut to sample a color, E, you can sample any colors in here. E, and then we are good, of course, because it's cosmetic items, usually it's not that rough, so I'm gonna dial to very low, maybe 0.001, and the specular, as you can see here, it looks like some foundations liquid or something. Of course, you can definitely refine the shape, anything, getting a little bit better. And for the lighting wise, I'm just gonna drag in here to getting a little bit closer. We want having some reflections and also some shadows going on here, so that looks a little bit better. So you can, for sure, you can spending more time to getting the shape looks a little better. And I would recommend you to go online to find some real photographs, even stock website, image website, to finding the good reference image. Spend your time to adding details and getting stuff done. But this is how you actually creating a cosmetic swatches better than just a regular round one. So I'm gonna do a fill light, getting some shadow fill. So that's kind of like how I made this thing through, and I want to do a quick recap of the process we have done. The first step is shape blocking. We're using a cube and subsurface 3 levels, and we're getting a general shape, and then we're using a topo to adding some geometries in specific areas to getting close to what this cosmetic swatches looks like. And then what we have done, we're using the Remash to get everything more refined, and we're using the same tools to adding some more details. The main tool we are using was the grab tool and the draw sharp tool, and also we're using a a pinch tool. We're using the blobs to adding some small details, and also you can play around with all the brushes. The important part I really want you guys to understand that is you have to try it and practicing, and in order to getting the result you want. The sculpting features is one thing that is getting really good in Blender 3.0. If you're really not interested to learn ZBrush as your sculpting tool, I think stick with the Blender sculpting is totally good enough for you. Just trying to spend more time to really play around with it, and feel free to ask me questions. Let me know is there anything that you're interested to know more about photorealistic rendering, and I'm really hoping this video is going to help you quite a bit and give you a confidence to get into the sculpting areas inside of Blender. Of course, if you really like this video, please consider subscribing my channel and follow me on Instagram. Well, if you're interested to really see the refined version of my files and with all these setup lighting and shader, you can be my Patreon. You will get access to this Blender files I created, or you can even purchase that in my Gumroad page. So either way, you can find a way to support this channel. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.